In news just coming in, a Moscow City Duma deputy has suggested that 6 more countries, Kazakhstan, Moldova, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia, should be denazified. What does one really make of this sort of a rhetoric is the big question. With this sort of a statement coming in from a Moscow City Duma deputy suggesting that 6 more countries need to undergo through the process of denazification. The statement that was previously made against Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Moldova, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia should be denazified is what a Moscow City Duma deputy has suggested.
As I travelled around Moscow, I looked at the impact the EU and US sanctions have had on Russia. Here is a report. Russia is one of the most sanctioned regimes in the world, a country that has learned to live with sanctions, and is the reason why, although sanctions this time are harsher, Russia still continues to live with them. And if you see the domestic structure over here and the financial institutions, they're working as normally as can be. People are not feeling the brunt of it really right now, but at a macro level, for people who are involved in foreign trade, it is a huge problem since international institutions have shut operations. Alpha Bank is one of the largest banks in Russia and is open. Speaking to a few people over here, they say that they've not had any problems, although Moscow did hit the panic button after the 24th of February, and many of them queued up outside of ATM machines. But it seems like right now things have gone back to normal because they are being able to withdraw money, and there are many European banks that have still not shut operations. This is the Credit Europe Bank that has not shut operations. Raiffeisen Bank, which is one of the biggest banks operating in Russia, is called a Russian bank, but the parent company is Austrian, still functioning here in Moscow, in Russia, and many other banks, including Russia Bank, are operating. People are being able to withdraw money. There are problems with using cards, but they have been using plastic cards, which is a form of digital currency and money. Are the banks working normally? Can you withdraw money? Are you facing problems?
No, I don't have problems.
Okay. Is there any difficulty with regards to banking in Russia?
No. No.
No? Louis Vuitton and many other international brands have shut operations here in Russia, but this is what the message of the Russian people is. The message over here with massive posters being put on the display windows of Louis Vuitton showroom here in Moscow, which says goodbye. It says goodbye Denmark, goodbye Sweden, goodbye many other Eastern European countries. The message over here by certain quarters in Russia is that they do not require these international brands if it means compromising Russia's security.
Now I can pay only Russian clothes, it's normal, okay, but I like different countries, from different countries clothes. This is no important problem.
It's большой. It's a very big shame.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. And you think that this should not have happened, this action inside Ukraine? Why?
Вы думаете, это не должно было?
Конечно, нет.
Why?
Дешево навыкать.
Убийство людей — это неправильно.
Killing people is not, never good.
I'm here at one of the largest malls in Moscow, and which actually houses most of the international brands. And quite a few of the international brands have stopped operations here in Moscow, in Russia. This is Bulgaria. The door doesn't open, and the shop is shut. But there are quite a few other international brands who have not stopped operations over here. Brunello Cucinelli is still open and operational, but Dior, on the other hand, on this side, not open. There are sanctions, and a lot of countries, a lot of companies have taken a stand to stop operations and shut shops. But not all of them have done that, which just goes to show that there is disparity in how the world and how businesses are viewing this entire crisis.
Half brands have left our market. I don't know for how long, but they will come back, I'm convinced.
Yet another nuclear attack threat by Putin in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The Kremlin spokesperson said should there be escalation and existential threat, Russia could resort to nuke attacks. Earlier, Putin activated Russia's nuclear forces. Here's a report.
Relentless onslaught on Ukraine. Ravaged cities, hundreds of casualties, but not much headway in winning the war. With its Ukraine offensive sputtering, Russia came out with yet another brazen nuclear threat, daring the West using its enormous nuclear stockpile. Refusing to rule out use of nuclear power, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov asserted that Russia would only use nuclear weapons in context of the ongoing war in Ukraine if there was an existential threat. He said Russia has a concept of domestic security and it's public, and that the reasons for nuclear arms to be used was there for everyone to see. While existential threat can mean anything Putin deems fit, this is not the first time Russia has flexed muscle and hinted at a nuclear attack. On February 28, Putin asked his defense forces to put nuclear deterrence on high alert.
Приказываю министру обороны и начальнику генерального штаба перевести силы сдерживания российской армии в особый режим несения боевого дежурства.
Putin has also shown eagerness to capture Ukrainian nuke plants, evident from his attacks on premises of Zaporizhzhia plant and destruction of a Chernobyl lab. But what's forcing Russia to resort to nuke threats? Is Putin merely flexing his nuclear muscle, or is it dangerous brinkmanship after failure to win the war, even 4 weeks into the invasion? With Geeta Mohan in Moscow, Bureau Report, India Today.
The conflict goes on for over a month now, and harsher sanctions have been imposed on Russia, particularly in the banking and the financial sector. But how is Russia, how is the state dealing with these sanctions? How is life in Russia? Here's a report.
With Russia's ties to the global financial system being choked, how is the ordinary Russian managing?
You bank with the Russian bank, and you're able to take out money?
No.
You know, can you withdraw money when you want to?
Yes.
And using cards, is using cards a problem?
Apple Pay is problem, but we have plastic cards.
Oh, you have plastic cards that you can use as currency.
Yes.
Only a handful of international banks are still operating in Russia, including the Credit Europe Bank, Raiffeisen Bank and Alpha Bank.
This is the Credit Europe Bank that has not shut operations. Raiffeisen Bank, which is one of the biggest banks operating in Russia, is called a Russian bank, but the parent company is Austrian, still functioning here in Moscow, in Russia, and many other banks, including Russia Bank, are operating. People are being able to withdraw money. There are problems with using cards, but they have been using plastic cards, which is a form of digital currency and money.
So what is the impact of the curbs on the Russian banking system?
Western countries withdrew Russia from the SWIFT system, it will have implications on the foreign trade, but nowadays it has really minimal implications on the domestic currency exchanges. According to the fact that some Russian bankings imposed limits on currency exchanges, this might be a real problem for Russian population in the midterm, but nowadays we can witness that people are not facing the lack of foods in shops, and so basically it is okay.
Crippling economic and business sanctions that aim to cripple the Russian economy and isolate its financial system from the global business and trade order. Dozens of sanctions already in effect, and President Joe Biden and US allies contemplating more.
He will attend an emergency NATO summit, joined by the leaders of the other 29 NATO allies. He will have the opportunity to coordinate on the next phase of military assistance to Ukraine. He will join our partners in imposing further sanctions on Russia and tightening the existing sanctions to crack down on evasion and to ensure robust enforcement.
With Geeta Mohan in Moscow, Bureau Report, Business Today TV.
Time for a short break. When we return, we'll talk about the scenarios that are playing out and the warnings of a World War III that's playing out here in Russia and across the world. Stay tuned. Even as the conflict rages on, there are growing fears of a global conflict. This even as the Western world has rejected Ukraine's demand of a no-fly zone. NATO is a silent spectator, with EU and United States of America imposing more sanctions. Can there be a way forward? Here's a report that decodes the ghost of another world war.
The war in Ukraine is now a month old and counting. But not for a moment has this been just Ukraine's fight. From the very beginning of the invasion, it has had all the tremors of the global conflict. Those leading the crisis themselves warn that World War III could be ahead. Russia first triggered the ghost of a global war by placing its nuclear weapons on high alert in February, following the move with a warning that World War III would have to be nuclear and destructive.
Всем понятно, что Третья мировая может быть только ядерной. Но, обращаю ваше внимание,
everybody understands that World War III can only be nuclear. It is in the heads of the Western politicians that nuclear war is always revolving and not in the heads of the Russians. That is why I assure you that we will not allow any provocations to force us out of the balance. But if a real war against us starts developing, those who carry out such plans must have a think.
Ну, это, наверное, должны думать об этом те, кто такие планы вынашивает, а они...
Amidst Ukraine's sustained pleas for NATO to impose a no-fly zone over the invaded nation, Russia raised the spectre again, warning that any such move could trigger a third world war. And that's probably the reason why, despite vehemently condemning Russia, the US or the European Union have rejected Zelensky's demand to declare Ukraine's airspace a no-fly zone.
Хочемо запровадити закриття неба, тому що конкретно
We want to close the airspace because our children are being deliberately killed. Missiles, bombs, jets are flying from the territory of Belarus and Russia.
Any move in this direction will be viewed by us as a participation in the armed conflict of whichever side whose territory will pose a threat to our service members. That very second we will view them as participants of the military conflict, and it would not matter what members they are.
Wars were fought in Iraq, Syria, and also between two of the biggest nations, China and India. But never before did the risk of World War III look as serious as it does now amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On a military scale, Russia's Ukraine war is limited. Yet the risk of World War III is bigger than ever and could just be a trigger away. Till now, Europe or America have refrained from sending troops to fight against Russia, limiting their response to sanctions and military aid. So why is the ghost of another world war so strong? World War is the name given to two multilateral wars that were essentially European. The First World War, fought during 1914 to 19, mainly involved Germany, Austria-Hungary and Turkey against the Allies, France, the UK, Soviet Russia, Italy, Japan, and from 1917, the United States. The Second World War, fought between 1939 to 1945, mainly involved Germany, Italy and Japan against France, UK, US and Soviet Russia. As the stakes pile up, as the pressure builds, and as the implications mount for Europe, the Russia-Ukraine war has the potential for a bigger war, both in weaponry and geography. Will NATO be pushed to impose a no-fly zone? And is that the one move separating the world from World War III? Bureau Report, India Today.
Make no mistake, this right here is Cold War 2.0. Russia and the United States of America are once again head-to-head. Nuclear forces of global powers are on high alert and the world has realigned. What does it mean for geopolitics of the world and a world order? ID code.
An iconic scene from perhaps the world's most famous Cold War film, harking back to a time of terrifying distrust. Nuclear hair triggers and a world even just a breath away from intercontinental mass destruction. Cut forward a few decades and a very hot war in Ukraine has a cloud of the old Cold War all around it. Sit back while we prove to you that we are in Cold War 2.0. Proof 1. Direct US-Russia tension. The first piece of proof, the war in Ukraine has sparked the most high-level tensions between the US and Russia in decades, with both superpowers reviving historic angst to paint each other as global imperialistic aggressors running roughshod over world peace.
Did you ask me whether I would call? Oh, I think he is a war criminal.
Proof 2. Big global realignment. The second piece of proof is the global realignment of the international order. Hugely reminiscent of Cold War pressures, complex linkages aside, the world stands massed against Russia, its ally China, a neutral India, with the United States making it clear to nations that they are against Russia or with Russia. The crisis in Ukraine is visible, crafting a new world order. Proof 3. Nuke forces on high alert. The most tangible revival of Cold War tensions is clear in Russia's move to place its nuclear forces on high alert in the wake of NATO movements to help Ukraine. The move by Putin, explained away as a defensive posture by Moscow, has ratcheted up nuclear tensions to dangerous Cold War levels, forcing other nuclear nations, by most accounts, to keep their nukes dusted and ready too. Proof 4. Biowarfare allegations. The allegations of biological weapons laboratories and experimentation with germ warfare are also typical of the Cold War era crossfire. Russia threw the first punch in the current crisis by accusing the US of maintaining biowarfare facilities on Ukrainian soil. The US hit back, saying Putin intends to use bioweapons of his own, and the allegation is just cover fire for his own insidious intentions. Proof 5. Isolation through airspace. With several nations closing their airspace to Russia, the sense of geographic isolation has heightened dramatically in the first few weeks of the Ukraine invasion. With few flights in and out of Russia, the alienation of a superpower is palpable and in many ways is even more than how it was during the Cold War. Proof 6. Moscow unplugged from global economy. The crippling sanctions against Russia haven't slowed Putin's military rumble in Ukraine, but Russian citizens are most definitely feeling the heat. A Soviet-era arrogance that Russia can survive without the global economy is also representative of Cold War-era confidence. The suggestion that the world needs Russia more than Russia needs the world. Proof 7. Mass mobilization across Europe. Perhaps the most visible manifestation of a new Cold War, the readiness of militaries in Europe across NATO nations and the move of several other countries like Finland to consider joining NATO, creating a spectre of the Russian menace. The suggestion that it's Ukraine today and the other countries next, painting a scary Cold War scenario that goes just beyond the cold. There's real combat taking place in Ukraine for a whole month and counting. One thing is certain, whenever that battle ends, Cold War 2.0 won't end anytime soon. With Shivarur, Bureau Report, India Today.
That's all in this week's edition of World Today from Moscow. Next week, we'll bring you reports from the Donbas region. Stay safe and take care.